Daycare. Calls back in session. We'll move on down through the agenda. Mayor and council comments, are there any? Hearing none, we'll move right on to that. Additions, corrections, adjustments to the agenda?
Yes, Your Honor. If you could please scratch out 6.2, Resolution 1, 2013, establishing the Fire EMS Equipment Reserve Fund. We don't need that resolution. We already have a similar equipment reserve fund that was approved in 2011 that will fit the bill. So, we don't need that. We do not need to create another reserve.
6.2. That's all.
Something to say, maybe?
All right, the way this works on these public hearings is there'll be a staff presentation and then statements in favor of the supplemental budget adoption, then statements in opposition of the supplemental budget adoption, statements in general, and council discussion. So at this time, we'll open up the staff presentation.
Council, citizens here tonight. I am presenting the FY 12-13 supplemental budget, and as most everyone sitting in this room knows, most of the time, what kicks a supplemental budget into gear is you forgot to put something in, okay, which one of the things we forgot to put in was the library, so we did not put the library in the budget when we did the original 12-13 budget. So that was issue number one. Issue number two was when the audits came back, we had at least 10 funds or more that changed, okay? For example, in the water reserve fund, we had $10 in that on the original 12-13 budget. When all the audit stuff came back, we had $120,000, which should have been in there when we did our budget, okay? The street fund, okay, we started with zero beginning fund balance, okay? It came in at around a little over $400,000 once we got the audits back. So all these funds caught up after doing all three of those audits. The water fund that we started at zero came in approximately $300,000 after we got the audit. So all those funds are the funds initially listed in the public hearing piece, okay? The one that didn't increase was the OIP fund. It went the other way, okay? Because of negative fund balances and because of prior period adjustments that were done through administrative overhead, where we went back about 5 years worth, and we went back through administrative overhead that we had not collected, so to speak. So we took that and we were able to reduce the general fund from 401 to 165, whatever the beginning, negative 165, by using prior period adjustments to administrative overhead. So that's how we were able to take it from 401 to 165. So I think that was a question that some people had. So, and what folks need to understand is when I build a budget, it's a combination of the audit and the current financials. Okay, it's not just one document or the other. And it's also some historical data that comes with it. So that's what I did as I built the budget. Our goal is to continue to keep spending down as tight as we can through the rest of the fiscal year. And best guess at this point, I believe that we should come in the general fund, we should come in with a ending fund balance of about $210,000 to $240,000 in the positive. And that is primarily off of our financials that we're working off right now. To date, you've brought in a little over 2 million and some change in the general fund. You've spent about 1.8 million so far. So the numbers are being pretty specific, pretty accurate. And the reason I trust the numbers more than I did before is when Summer Sears and Susan went through and rebuilt the chart of accounts. Okay, that was the key issue to trying to get accurate financials. So that's what I worked off of as I built this budget, financials, the audit, okay, combined, and other historical documents that I had here in the office. So, and I believe that I am giving you a budget that will work, that'll get us to the end of the year, and our goal is not to spend up to the 2.9 million in the general fund. That is not the intent here. The intent is to try and alleviate the negative fund balance that we have.
Hey, there's a guy that looks just like you that's been kind of trying to get here. Nice shirt, by the way.
I have so we're coming Jerry Garcia tonight. I heard it was. I have a trooper who wants to talk to you after the meeting. You know, probably the one sitting down in the corner with me, right? Jerry
We just started this, so we're just into the staff report right now.
I'm sorry.
No,
That's my
it's fine. Anyway, the goal is not to go crazy and spend up to these funds. Okay, we've got to have some kind of a beginning fund balance. Okay, and for example, let's say we come in at 2.7 instead of 2.9. The key is going to be what did we spend? Okay, so we come in at 2.7 and we spent 2.5. Okay, we're still fine. Okay, that's the key. Is you do not want to overspend the budget. So the key is to keep it pinched down and no go nuts. And there's no intent of doing that. Any questions, Councilor? I stand corrected. So I am done with my staff presentation, Your Honor. So did you open the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you began it.
So, I am done, so I think we're the next step.
Statements in favor of the supplemental budget adoption. Statements in favor of the supplemental budget adoption. Third and last time, statements in favor of the supplemental budget adoption. Hearing none, moving on, statements in opposition of the supplemental budget adoption.
I'd like to make some statements.
Yes.
The general fund budget should start with the prior year's ending fund balance. That balance was a negative $401,571,000. This means that at the end of this fiscal year, based on this budget, the general fund will be in the negative by $235,000 if you start out with the correct number based on what's in the budget right now. Two of the three funds that are closed in the general fund at the end of 2012 audit never occurred, so the supplemental budget should also include the closing of the wood stove fund and the agency fund. I believe the bulk of probably two audits occurred in 2012, and all of Tiffany's fees occurred in 2012, so I'm not sure why the fees for summer and the auditors for 2013 are so high. Utilizing two full budget lines and borrowing from the LGIP is really excessive. Has the council asked for expense reports on those line items? There should be a report of the current year actual revenue and expense by line item. That way you can see whether the proposed budget amounts for the year make sense with what is really actually happening. That budget doesn't have actuals for the prior year or the current year. The supplemental doesn't, is what I'm talking about. I'm concerned about the accounting for the library. There was revenue and expense last year and the year before. So if you spend what is budgeted for this year, you'll go over the $800,000 grant by about $35,000. There's no report providing you an estimate of what the ending fund balances will be this year in that supplemental budget. Does anyone know how much is left in the LGIP? And the last thing I have to say is that I think we need to make sure that the administrative overhead transfers have legitimate business purpose, such as can we reconcile the amount of the number of hours worked by the general fund employees for the funds that the administrative overhead is in. $263,000 seems like a lot of hours. I don't know what the staff makes, but if it was $30 an hour, that's 8,766 hours or 168 hours per week of extra labor that's not being spent in the general fund. That seems excessive. That's all I have to say.
Okay,
Statements in general.
statements in general.
I think there may be more statements in opposition.
Oh, more statements not.
Oh, I'm
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
As a bookkeeper for the Cascade Motel and the treasurer of the American Legion, I do know quite a bit about accounts, budgets, etc. So I'm not speaking as though I have no knowledge. The question I want to ask, very simple. Isn't it true that the beginning balance for this year must always be the same as the ending balance of last year? And isn't it also true that if you want to adjust last year's ending balance, you must do that through prior period adjustments? I'd like to know then why the beginning balance for the general fund is different from the audit. That is not proper accounting in my eyes. Proper accounting would be to show the same beginning balance as last year's ending balance and then show the readers the prior period adjustment. The one request I do have is I would like to see a copy of the prior period adjustments and the explanation of why those are being suggested this year. And my last comment, I understand why you need a supplementary budget, because that is to put into this budget money that you apparently, for some reason, whether it was incorrect auditing the year previous or whatever, but all of a sudden you've got money from last year's audit that was cleared, signed off, passed by the council. So you found this money. You have brought it into this year's budget. So I understand why you need a supplementary budget. But what I don't understand, and I understand where you're going from, Louis, your idea is to bring down the deficit. But what I don't understand is why, after a budget committee presented, why after a council signed off a budget, why in this supplementary you've increased all of the line items and increased this year's budget? Is that because you've overspent already? Because if you've increased it, there's no way you're going to bring that deficit down. That's all I have to say.
Okay. No, at this point, we just have to move on and then we'll have council discussion and then we can probably, at some point, these questions need to be answered. And I don't know exactly who that is, but we'll find out, I guess.
I was just wondering if that was a question.
That was several questions. Statements in general. What falls into that purview? That can be
That's it.
Already? All right. Hearing nothing in
Oh,
general?
I'm sorry, I do have one statement in general, I forgot. I remember that while Louis was giving his staff report, I wrote down this question. Was the administrative overhead that you were talking about in the, that you guys used to change the difference from the ending fund balance to what you're using as the beginning fund balance now, was that budgeted in those prior years?
It was, but you
Yes.
never really took it, you
Yeah,
never
it
really
was,
set
but
it
a
out.
lot of, no, it was. It was budgeted, but we went back and we looked at the percentages that were being used currently, and we went back and we went 5 years back on any funds that we hadn't hit about the same, and that's where we got our prior period adjustment from.
But wasn't all that was budgeted included in those audits during that time? I remember reviewing those audits, and there's lots of prior period adjustments already mentioned in them. Even this 2012 audit has a ton of prior period adjustments. But are you saying that there's more than that?
We had some more. Yeah, I had the accountant go
That
through.
was budgeted?
I had the accountant go through our audits, budgets, everything. And they were, yes, we did have administrative overhead budgeted, but she went through and went with numbers, different percentages. She used percentages that we had been using, went back, went through the different funds to see if there was any 3, 4, 5% differences from what we were using, less than what we were using. So she brought it pretty close to the same percentages that we're using currently and brought in administrative overhead as a prior period adjustment. So that's how I was able to reduce the 401 down to 165. So I brought in my consultant. She went through all the systems. She brought that to me. I didn't pull that out of the air. Okay, that's why we hire CPAs and these folks to do that stuff for us. Okay, I didn't pull that out of the air. I had the CPA go through and I said, hey, I need to find ways to try and reduce our budget deficit in the most proper way that we can, and this is what she found. That's what I did. So it got me down to 165,000. So I followed in that portion, I followed the guidance of our consultant, and she said that she felt it was proper, and that's what I went with.
It was done with the principles of generally accepted accounting procedures. It was done within those perimeters. So there shouldn't be any issues from the auditors regarding that, because we use the guidelines that are generally accepted. It was a gap. It was a gap.
If that's true, then why doesn't this fund or this supplementary budget start out with the same ending fund and show the prior period adjustments?
Because your budget is showing what you think you need. It's not the financial statements. The budget is a guess, basically is someone's best guess of what you're going to need to spend in a given year. Here's what we have. Those were used based on what Bob came up with to create that budget. We're coming in now because we've had, one of the issues is the library. Part of the library for a long time during the prior year, it was scheduled to be completed in June before that year end. There were some things that happened. One of them had to do with the Indian reservations. They had to contact them about it. It held up the production of the library. When this budget for this current year was done, it was thought that the library would have been completed. It wasn't. So the expenses of the library have occurred during this fiscal year, but we don't have it in the budget to spend that remaining grant money. And the budget, or the library rather, in that audit, there was a single audit done of the library. We are not over budget on the library at all. It's actually coming in under budget. And the auditors did a single budget. It's included in last year's audit. A single audit on that. what we need to do now is bring into this budget the money that wasn't spent from that grant, so that it can go ahead and be brought into the budget and spent. It should have been done last year. It was just when that budget was created, they thought the library had done it at the end of June. And so, the budget, or the library is not over budget at all. It's actually coming in under budget. And we're in the process of closing that out. But when you created your budget, you have these numbers that, when the council approves it, that's your permission to spend that money. Supplementals are done because things happen during the year, this library being one of them, that you actually need more money to spend. And so you're looking at what have we spent, what will we need to by the end of the year. Those are the figures that are in the other column. Your actual financial figures are not in your budget at this point. The budget is what you're going to spend.
And we do have the financials that show all the prior period adjustments. So we do have all that documented, okay? Every bit of it, but it's not gonna be in your budget.
Isn't her question about the GAAP that you referred to, isn't there a rule with that general accounting, whatever, that you must start a budget with the same fund, number as the ending fund balance from the year
No.
before?
Not a budget, no.
An audit, yes, not a
Because-
budget.
When you bring your budget, when you go back, when the budget reconvenes, you're gonna get a budget from Louis that's showing the actuals from this year. And that you're gonna look at those, and then you're gonna see the other line is gonna be what he's projecting that we're gonna need for the next fiscal year. And then you go and you're looking at them, and that's when the budget committee comes in and says, well, you only spent this last year, why are you asking for twice as much? That's a legitimate question, because then you could come in, oh, well, say it's in the line item for street repairs, just as an example. Well, we have to do this repair here on Rainbow and blah, 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 that's why we're asking for twice as much here, because we anticipate we're gonna spend it, we have this project. When that dollar amount is approved, that becomes the budget amount. During the year, as they do these improvements, in the financials, not the budget, the financials show all those expenses as they're done.
I'm pretty sure that in the statement that Louis made, well, wait a minute, I don't know if it's in here or not. Didn't our, yeah, right here. Louis wrote this in the April 15th letter for the summary of the supplemental budget. The forensic auditor, Tiffany Couch, discovered a number of irregularities as she reviewed the city's finances. One of them was that prior year budgets falsely inflated beginning fund balances, giving the impression that the city had more resources than actual. And I thought it said in here that there had been no analysis or review of budget to actual reports to ensure city funds were being properly managed. Blah, blah, blah.
So in
I
simple,
thought it said somewhere in here that one of the things that Tiffany talked about in her reports, one of the problems that the city had was that the ending fund balances weren't matching the beginning fund balances in budgets.
it's possible, I read a lot of stuff, so.
One of the things that she has in here, I'll go through it. The city's operating budget for 2012 appeared to falsely inflate expected city revenues. In other words, when a prior administrator, whoever he may have been, gave the budget committee the budget to look at, his figures of what he thought, he had more money in that line item for revenues than what he should have. He overinflated that number to the budget committee, so the budget committee looking at the expenses says, oh, we have this much revenue, we can spend this. Unfortunately, we weren't gonna have that much revenue. So throughout the year, there was money spent, like this revenue was coming in, but the revenue never came in. And so we ended up with negative fund balances.
I'll have to find the report, I'm sure that budgets was part of it.
Well, actually, it is your turn. So you kind of let us go here and thank you that we got to do the dialogue, but it is your turn.
All right, we're at statements in general.
I just have one one statement in general, if I understand the budget as it's going on now. I believe we never actually ran out of cash, hard spending cash, but we did bust through our budget, which made us go paper negative. We did spend down all our reserves, which, as we all know, are against the law and illegal to do. So we never actually ran out of cash and bounced any checks. Our TAN saved our behinds.
Correct.
And so we went paper negative, but not dollar negative. Is that the way I understand it?
If you're
You
talking
mean in
actual
prior
money in the
years?
bank,
That's what I'm talking about.
that's actual money in the bank, yeah.
Spending money, okay.
Yeah, no checks bounced. That I know of, but I wasn't in there, but as far as I can see, no checks
We had
bounced.
$38,000 in the
Yeah.
bank.
So we,
That's
like I
how
said, the
much
TAN
money we
saved
had.
her behind and
What
that.
saved us was the
Yeah,
tax
tax
anticipation
that's the TAN.
note,
The tank.
not the money we had in the bank, because we didn't have enough in the bank.
So we saved ourselves cash-wise, dollar-wise, but budget-wise, we were in the negative. And we're now, you saying, if I understand what you're saying with this budget, it's gonna bring us almost to zero negatives? Or
That's the goal.
tolerable negatives?
That's the
No
goal.
negative.
That's correct. I'm
Yeah, no
going
negatives.
for none, for no negative fund balance at the end of the year. That's
All right, thank you, that's my understanding of the budget.
All right, now, council discussion. Now you can go.
Okay. It's about the $400,000 deficit thing, and James sort of said the same thing that I'm thinking. I think our first instinct is to think of that $401,000 deficit as some sort of debt, as something that if we don't start out with $401,000 as that general fund beginning balance, that we're going to then overspend. How can you say you're $401,000 in debt, now we're only $162,000 in debt? You're obviously going to have a problem if you then budget from there. But it's not debt. It's not real money. It's budget lines that we have to take care of because it was real money at some point. But it's not like we have a bank notice, we don't have bills coming due for that money. It's basically what happened is when they didn't balance the budgets and all of these problems kept compounding and rolling forward, we got to this point. We have to have a balanced budget, we have these issues that we have to fix, but it's not actual real money debt, correct? It's not something that,
It's not current debt.
right, it's stuff that happened in the past. We have money in the bank, we know we
Yes.
have money in the bank, it's correct, our bookkeeping is sound,
Yes.
and now we have to deal with the mistakes that they made and never fixed.
The easiest way for me to explain this is a visual. Picture a bucket. And halfway across that bud, in the middle of the bucket, top of the bucket's here, bottom is here. This is balanced. The general fund balance started out with this negative balance way down here. We're pouring money into it. We're pouring in, tax money comes in. We get cigarette tax money from the state. We get revenues here, there. And so it's bringing it up. As we pour this money in, it starts to bring up to where we're above, back to this line. So we have made up that deficit. It was real money, it was really spent. But at the end of the year, you have what you have in that bucket. So we've made up, and we've slowly made up. And part of it is Bob had a budget that was really hammered down. And we actually been getting in more property revenues than what really was anticipated. So that's helped bring that level that was down back up to the level mark. Some of the administrative overhead that was never utilized in past years came in, and that is a paper thing there. But by utilizing that past, which was okay to go and grab that, because we used the same percentages, we did not deviate from that. That would have been the wrong thing to do. We used the same percentages that had been used in prior years when they figured those. We brought those in. That brought the level back up a little bit more. And what Louis done here is he's went out and made other adjustments, but again, has helped bring that level back up. And we're watching the finances of what's being spent now to keep it down so that more money's going in, so it's slowly bringing it back up. That's the best way I can describe it, that so you can actually visualize it, that this is where we want to be, here's where we started, and at the end of the year, it is what it is, and that's what you move forward with. With the budget